I'm excited to be here and also challenged. The excitement is, this subject is one I'm most passionate about of all the things that I communicate or worked on or focused on in my life. And that's because I believe if you're not happy in your intimate relationship, you're not happy. Because no matter what happens, no matter how much love we have from our children or how much we accomplish in our lives or how much we achieve, I personally believe in our soul, everybody wants that experience of aliveness. So I'm not just about marriages. I had 4 different fathers, so I know the impact that things can come from being in a position where families don't stay together. But frankly, I wouldn't have changed it. To see my mother miserable and unhappy, to stay with somebody, which is what she did with one of those relationships for 10 years, I wouldn't want to see her do again. So I'm not for the institution by itself. I'm not for the relationship. I'm for the people in it. And what I really believe, though, is it's a critically important institution, and I've supported it amazingly, but I want to make sure that the people within it don't just settle for being able to say, I'm still married. To me, that's not an accomplishment.
One of the things that we found is we meet couples, and very often people say, you guys seem like, you're newlyweds, or they'll ask us, did you guys just get married, which we're really proud of after 12 years. But it's not a matter of time that makes that difference. If you're single, one of the reasons that people find themselves in a relationship that they're unhappy with is they're filtering today's relationship through the past. And one of the things that we've done for anybody we're going to help is get you to clear the decks of the past and step into who you're with right here and right now. That can start to create a difference. Because in the beginning of a relationship, what were you willing to do for that person? Anything, right? Anything, whatever it takes. Now after a few months or a few weeks or a few years, all of a sudden you're saying, would you take out the trash? And in the beginning you're like, whatever you want, the trash, I'm happy to do it for you. Now it's like, what do I look like, your janitor? So learning how to be able to create that aliveness again and not filter your partner through an old story is one of the most important things you can do to have a passionate relationship.
I believe that the challenge in relationships and in life in every area is emotional fitness. That it starts with how emotionally fit you are in a relationship. If you think about a relationship, other than the maintenance of some responsibility, people today in our society won't do things just for responsibility. They've been taught to focus on themselves, unfortunately. And while we all have to have a sense of responsibility, what's even greater, it's like discipline. Discipline never works long term. Never. What works is when you become addicted to something positively new. You trade one addiction for another. When you shift from having to doing something to wanting to do something. So our focus is how to make that happen. But I say this to you. If you want to change a relationship, the number one thing you have to do is master your own emotions. If you don't do that, forget it. There's no hope. And what's wonderful, though, is it's easy to do if you know how. But none of us have been taught really emotional leadership. Emotional management is the very minimum, much less how to direct and shape ourselves. I don't mean faking your emotions. I don't mean pushing them down. I don't believe in positive thinking, although you may think that from watching, some of the media coverage, because people see me in an audience and there's 12,000 people and they're jumping and leaping and people go, oh, they're just in this motivational stuff. It's not that. It's that energy is part of life. And if you're sitting passively listening, you're not going to be able to listen very long, certainly not 50 hours, anything like that. If you turned on and you saw a rock and roll concert, you'd see people cheering, going for it. If you went to a sporting event, why do people do it? Because there's an energy there. So I create that in those environments. But I'm not into positive thinking. I'm not here tonight to tell you to go to your garden and say, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. I'm very clear that I believe that life is about leadership and being truthful to yourself. And so I believe, number one, that the mandate for any great relationship and the mandate for anybody to lead their own life and not be a follower is you got to see things as they are, but not worse than they are. Because that's where most people go. That's where they go in relationship. That's why they start to tear it down. That's why the relationship starts to break down, because people get scared when it isn't working out, and then they make it worse than it is so they don't have to try. Because they don't want to try again and be disappointed. They don't want to feel that sense of rejection. They don't want to feel that sense of failure. So most people make it much worse than it is. People tell me all the time, oh, I'm skeptical, or I'm pessimistic. I said, no, you're gutless. It takes no guts, it takes no courage to be a pessimist, to say it's not going to work, to try to find out what's wrong. What's wrong is always available. So is what's right. So I'm not into positive thinking, but I am into intelligence. And intelligence says, see it as it is, don't make it worse than it is. You must immediately clarify what has to be changed. Whenever you have what you used to call a negative emotion, you're now going to call an action signal. You know that action signal is signaling you need to change one of two things. Either your perception or your procedure. Now let me clarify what I mean by that. Your perception might be, for example, that, gosh, you feel hurt. You feel like your husband doesn't love you so much anymore, or your wife doesn't love you so much anymore because, gosh, when you first met, boy, all you had to do was, look at them and they dropped their newspaper and came over and hugged you. Now they don't. You have a sense of loss and that hurts you inside. And that hurt is a lot more painful than the feelings of just being uncomfortable. The point, though, is this. Is this an appropriate emotion for you to feel based on this situation and this time with this person? That's really the question we want to ask ourselves whenever we have an emotion. We know that we have that signal. We need to first identify it, and then secondly, immediately appreciate this signal is offering us a message, and the message is we need to change. Again, our perception or our procedures. So our perception might be, person doesn't love me. Do we need to change our perception? Do we have some rules that are inappropriate in this situation? And the answer here probably is yes. Wouldn't you agree? This person is just wrapped up in what they're doing because they're just immersed. It doesn't mean they love you any less. What this emotion is telling you is you need to change your perception because otherwise you're going to feel pain for no reason. You might also look at this same situation as a symbol that you need to change your procedure. Procedure means the way you're proceeding with this information. In other words, what this may be is a signal to you that you really aren't communicating your real needs to your husband or to your wife. Maybe what you need to do is change your procedure, and instead of feeling hurt or instead of feeling uncomfortable, turn to your husband or wife and say, honey, I know you're wrapped up in your work. I know you're totally immersed. I know you're trying to do stuff that supports the whole family here. But you know what? I just need, 3 minutes with just you and I, because I really need right now to just feel loved by you. I need to hold you. I need to feel connected to you. Now, if that person starts to get upset, obviously you're getting feedback that your procedure still didn't work. You have to be a little more flexible, a little more creative, or maybe a little bit more loving in the way you do it. Or maybe change the timing in which you go about something. But that's changing procedure, changing the way you communicate. Or another way of changing procedure might be it's a signal that says that the way you're communicating your husband or wife doesn't make them want to make you feel loved right now. That your present behavior may be turning them off. For example, let's say you feel rejected by them because when you come in the door, they don't rush up and give you a hug. They're immersed in something. Now, how do you respond to that? Well, what a lot of people do when they feel rejected is they feel uncomfortable with it, or they feel hurt, or some people get angry when they feel rejected. Now, what's the message of anger? The message of anger is you have a standard for your life, something that's important to you, and it's not being met by another person, or maybe even not being met by you. Sometimes we get angry because we're not living our own standards, huh? So let's say as a result, one of your standards is that people who love you, they run up and they greet you in your home. They don't do that today. You feel angry. One of your standards has been violated. Something you believe important is not happening, and now you're angry about it. How do you respond now to your spouse who doesn't even know what's going on? Maybe you give them a dirty look, or maybe you make some snide remark, or you find something wrong with what they're doing. As a result, this person may very well purposely reject you. Now when you're feeling this rejection, you're feeling this hurt or this anger, and you say, okay, this anger means I have a message here, a signal. Signals I need to change either my perception or my procedure. Maybe you don't need to change your perception. Maybe they really are rejecting you deliberately. Maybe the procedure is not only how you communicate, but how you're behaving. Maybe you need to look and say, I'm not treating this person in a very loving way. No wonder they're giving me this feedback. I need to change me. Are you following me so far? So we're always getting the message. We're identifying the signal. We're appreciating the message and knowing the message is telling us we either need to change our perception or our procedure. The way we're communicating, the way we're behaving.
See, I believe the most powerful force in the world is to be consistent with the thoughts, ideas, concepts, and beliefs you hold to be true about yourself. That is what identity is. Identity is the governor on every single area of your life. It literally sets the temperature for all of the conditions of your life. That says we know what we are, but not what we may be.
Getting what you really want and being able to attract it into your life. What we have to look at is basically the obstacles that we have conditioned ourselves. You notice I say that we have conditioned ourselves, because I've never believed that we need to be putting the responsibility on someone else. If you're conditioned, it's because you have allowed yourself to become that. And if we are conditioned, if we've conditioned ourselves to believe certain kinds of things, and one of the things that we kind of believe and hang on to and live with is this whole idea that all of the things that happened to me in my past are what are keeping me from doing what I'd like to do today.
Life is meant to be lived joyously. It truly is. If you're doing and living a life that's not joyous and happy, something is wrong and you need to make a change. Right? We're here on this planet for a finite amount of time. Make it a good one. When my guru was dying, one of the last things he ever said was, "What an amazing life. I would not have traded it for anything in the world." And I said to myself, what beautiful words to hear from a dying man. I would love to be able to say in my last breath, look back on my life. Go, what an amazing life it was. And that was just, I couldn't do it again, even if I tried. That was just fantastic. In order to do that, we really need to know what we want.
There becomes a time when you no longer fit in your old story. There's a new part 2 trying to be born for you. And it requires you to own every part of the past, but own every part of the possibility. And on the other side of that, the diamonds that will drop out of your mouth, the diamonds that will come birthing from your soul, the seeds that will be planted, and the harvest that will grow, you will be barely recognizable. But better than that are the people around you. Because when you change, you is just one person. But when you become a force to be reckoned with, then your voice permeates